You're listening to Two Vatos Talking, aka TVT Bro Talk, a podcast by two dads discussing life's challenges and blessings with the goal to create a sincere community for men. We're your co-hosts, Eduardo and Spencer.
All right, we are live, Season 1, Episode 3, Our Moms. Ed, get us started.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Margarita Sanchez Natividad, whom I would lovingly call Jefita, was born in 1932 in Xochimilco, just outside of Mexico City. Her mother died, bringing her into the world, and she was raised very lovingly by her father Juanito. At 27, she left Mexico City alone, chasing her independence. She arrived in Juarez, where a fortune teller stopped her one afternoon and spoke words that would echo for the rest of her life. "You've traveled far," she said, "but your journey isn't over. You'll marry a well-dressed man with dark hair who loves you deeply, but he'll break your heart tremendously. You'll have 8 children, and you'll live a very long life." My mom would tell me about that fortune teller repeatedly, always saying that the fortune teller got everything right except the number of kids. She only had 7, and I was number 7. But when I left home at 18, my parents took in my 6-month-old nephew and raised him as their own, child number 8. And suddenly, that old prediction became fact. My mom always said her heart belonged to Mexico, but she'd be buried in America. On June 4th, 2019, at 87 years old, that declaration also became true.
You know that fable about the tortoise and the hare? Well, that's my mom, except she's a combination of the tortoise and the little engine that could. When my brother and I were kids, my mom would take us to the track at Sam Houston High School in Houston's North Side, where she would run laps while we entertained ourselves. I would keep an eye on her, which was easy to do because she ran at a snail's pace. But before you knew it, one lap would turn into 2, then 3, and by the time she 12 laps or more. As we got older, she began to run at Memorial Park in central Houston, a beautiful 3-mile trail set amongst piney woods nestled along a golf course. She would run that trail next to men in those 2 short running shorts, going 2 to 3 times her speed. But she always remained unfazed, although inspired to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. When she was in her mid-50s, she told me that she was planning to run a marathon. I told her she was crazy. She looked at me stone-faced and said, "Watch me." My mom ran the Houston Marathon that year and ran it again the following year for good measure, and since then has completed a 150-mile bike race and now runs half marathons in her 70s. My mom, born Yolanda Salazar, now Hernandez, does not know how to stop. And if you tell her no, she only hears, "Not yet." All right, so Xochimilco, when you hear Xochimilco, you think of this beautiful place where, you think of Loteria and this woman on a chalupa, right? Yeah. This on a canoe that is kind of the remnants of the original Mexico City, right? That's where your mom came from, this beautiful place right outside of Mexico City.
Yeah, so my mom was born in 1932, no electricity. She would talk about how she would stay up at night and look through the holes in her roof and be able to see the stars, just to kind of give you an idea of the humility that she was born into. We were never wealthy from her side of the family, right? My grandfather did his best to raise her. After his wife died, giving birth to my mom, he remarried like 10 years later. And she would tell me about how beautiful it was, right? Just how gorgeous it was. And I, in fact, have a really cute picture of her where she's like 5 years old, and she looks like a Native American. And on the back of it, it says that she was selling flowers at like the local market, so she was out there dressed like this little Native person. But it's a really great picture. My grandpa must have gotten that at some studio out there. So Xochimilco, I went there when I was like 16, but we didn't really do a lot of, tourist stuff. It was more just kind of visiting family and doing that kind of thing. But now I hear it's a beautiful place, and they have gondolas and stuff like that. So
Well, that's amazing because, when people think of Mexico or their parents or grandparents coming from Mexico, you might, Chihuahua and Durango and places that are closer to the border. And every now and then you hear Mexico City. But I've never heard of someone coming from Xochimilco, right?
Yeah.
Which is, kind of the heart of Mexico, if you will.
Sure.
And for your mom to come from there and to make her way up to Juarez. So tell me about that. How old was she again when she came up, and who did she come with, and how did she come to El Paso?
Yeah, so my mom would tell me how much love she was raised by her father and then her aunts and uncles. But for whatever reason, she left by herself in her mid-20s and just decided, she was just going to venture off on her own. She ended up in Juarez, and she would work like waiting tables, and then she learned how to do seamstress kind of work. And so when she was a waitress at some little cafe, I think that's where she ended up meeting my dad. And then my dad asked her to go to watch a boxing match, right? Because that's what he liked doing. And so she said yes, and she played hard to get. And then my dad, did whatever he had to do to convince her.
He put the charm on.
He played
The Natividad charm.
He laid on the Natividad charm, right? And she told me he gave her a sweater of some sort, right? She commented one day, "Well, that's a really nice sweater, like a sweater vest or something," and that he gifted it to her that same day or the next day. And so, he was really working hard to get her because, and my dad was a well-dressed man, right? Like back in the day, a suit was kind of appropriate, and then shiny shoes and well-done hair, getting your hair done every week and all that stuff. So he was a well-manicured man. He liked to drink and he liked to go out and do all that stuff. But I think he was a bit of a ladies' man. And
He liked to look good, look sharp,
yeah,
represent himself well.
To his dying days, right? He always wanted to get a haircut. He always wanted to make sure that he looked good, And that's old school, I would say. If you look at the gangster movies and stuff where everybody's dressed really nice. But anyways, he was laying down the charm to get my mom, and then he convinced her to marry him. They had a couple kids in Juarez, and then they migrated over to America shortly after.
There's so many interesting things there. The idea of that she commented on his sweater,
Yeah.
and he gave it to her.
Yep.
Right? That's not common in a lot of cultures, but it's very common in indigenous culture, right? And Mexico is very indigenous. My mom has done similar things where, I've had people over and they might comment on her earrings. "Oh, I like your earrings." Or someone else, right? And she'll take them off and say, "Here you go. These, you can have them," right? Yeah. That's not common in a lot of cultures, but there's something about that we've gotten from, I would like to believe, our indigenous past that says that, hey, we're going to share some things that they don't really belong to me, but they belong to us.
And it to your point, it probably has a lot more meaning, knowing that they took affection to it. You would think it was a sincere compliment, and if that sincere compliment is accompanied by that gift, then it's all the more meaningful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a great thing. I don't think that happens very much nowadays.
No.
I don't think
not
so.
Not as much. No. But I love that part of the culture. And another part of the culture that I think gets misinterpreted by people who, are on the outside looking in. We talk about machismo and machistas, right? So macho men.
Yeah.
And we think Mexican society, Latino society can be very macho, and it can be. But we're also, in many ways, very matriarchal.
Yep.
Right? The woman may not, make the money or have the brute force, but there's a lot of decision making made by
a lot of influence.
A lot of influence, right? Whether, you're right. So maybe in that decision, and I've heard it told this way once again, and actually from someone from one of the pueblos here in New Mexico, so indigenous culture, where someone said, my mom said, your dad's the head of the household,
right?
But I'm the neck.
Oh, yeah.
right?
I've heard the heart too, but
Right. In
the
other
neck.
words, I control which direction that head is looking, right? And that's a great way to put it. So I mentioned the matriarchal because, your mom's 20-something.
Right.
She didn't stay home, deep into the interior of Mexico. She crossed, half of a country,
No, yeah.
crossed a border
Right.
by herself, made a lot of decisions on her own, right? And so when I think of my mom, someone who, her childhood was different.
Right.
Everybody's childhood is different. But so my mom's mother, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Consuelo Salazar, beautiful woman, the kind of grandmother everybody wants, the loving, tender grandmother who always has rice and beans on the stove waiting for you no matter when you come, right? Well, at some point, early in her marriage, she contracted tuberculosis, which was a not uncommon disease back in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right.
And so because it's highly contagious, she couldn't take care of her children. Apparently between maybe, I don't know how it works, but bouts of being contagious or being sicker, she would still have children. My grandpa was a trucker.
Yeah.
He was from Mexico. He was a trucker here in the U.S., and they wound up having 6 kids. As my grandmother used to say, I had 6. But the first one, Jorge, she would even say his name,
Right.
died at birth, right? She goes, that was the first, right? And then the rest survived. My mom was the third, if you will, but the second living.
Okay.
And so because my grandma had tuberculosis and my grandpa was a truck driver who wasn't going to stay home and take care of the kids, they were all kind of handed off like puppies.
Wow.
Some of them lived in orphanages, some lived in foster homes. And my mom was in an orphanage with her older brother, my Uncle Bobby. And, my mom's a positive leaning person, right? Some people are just positive. Some people are negative. Some people learn to, read the self-help books and grow, that sort of thing. But my mom's just naturally positive. And you would think growing up in an orphanage, not having your family, being separated from your brothers and sisters, you would think that would, lead to someone feeling less loved, right? And sort of
resentful, maybe.
Yeah, resentful. But that's not her. It's actually the opposite, right? I'd ask her, what was it like in the orphanage? Thinking she was going to give me a sad story. No. Oh, it was fun. We would do this, we would do that. They would take us to summer camp.
She found the positive in everything.
And everything, practically. And so in the summers, even though they went to camp sometimes, that's when her father would pick them up and take them to Mexico during, the summer when they were not in school, and they would stay with family in Mexico and Puebla and Cholula, actually. Yeah. So both our families have roots in these sort of magical places. Yours Xochimilco and mine in Cholula, right? Which is, if you've heard of Cholula, it's like the city of 1,000 churches, and it's that brand of that salsa, right?
The salsa, right?
That's the only time she kind of talked a little negative, was like because her grandma was mean.
Okay.
In Mexico, and she goes, yeah, she was mean, and she would, whip us or whatever if we misbehave.
That's old school mean.
And I had to.
It's a different kind of mean.
I had to sell these little bananas on the front porch, and that sort of thing. But she's just a positive person who looked at everything positive, right? And so we were never allowed to sort of wallow or be sad or complain. She just would not allow that.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why, I think naturally, but also because of her, I have usually a positive outlook on life.
Sure.
And so does my brother. And this despite, her living in an orphanage, her seeing a lot of violence, because when the family did get back together, it wasn't the Brady Bunch or anything like that.
Right.
There was a lot of violence and physical, abusive, verbal, that sort of thing between my grandfather and my grandmother, and how he treated his kids, because he was probably an alcoholic, very macho, that sort of thing. But she never said anything bad about him, unlike some of her other brothers and sisters who didn't have the best relationship. For her, her dad was always my daddy,
Yeah.
She loved him. In fact, we took him in many times, and he lived with us, right? But it was never, she's just a positive person. And so I think that reflected in a lot of things she did in her life. Yeah. And I'd imagine that's, maybe in a different way, but with your mom, because in episode 2, we talked about our dads, and you
Right.
said your dad was an alcoholic. How did your mom, what was that relationship like, and how did she cope with that?
Boy, what a great question. It's a journey, right? So, like, I know she fell in love with my dad. My dad was always a provider, and he was always the macho, and so I don't know what his drinking was like when they first met, but it was a common phrase when I grew up that te pusiste bien natividad, right? Like you got real natividad last night.
Oh, wow.
And that was just the way we would describe you drank too much, right? And so, my dad, when he finally checked into AA, my mom found Al-Anon. And then Al-Anon, I think, was one of those really big support systems that was able to help her kind of reframe everything that she was going through. And then she would, I would take her to these meetings, and she would come back and she would tell me about how bad it was for other people. And I think when you start sharing like information like that with other folks, and you start saying like, man, I have it bad, but man, I don't have it that bad, And that accompanied with her faith, she was constantly reading her Bible. And so I think she got through all of those years, which were hard years, when my dad was out drinking, womanizing, or whatever, and she was left alone with 7 kids, for all those years, and no family around, no BFF, no phone to just call up mom and dad and say, hey, can you watch the kids so I could go out for a little while?
Did y'all have a house phone?
We did. Yeah, we did. But they used to charge, every call was charged. It wasn't like cell phones now, right?
Right.
And so she didn't have that support. My dad's family was in Juarez, and so he had a lot of support through his side of the family.
And she had no family here?
No, none. They all are still in Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
And so to see them was always a big deal, for them to travel over here to see us, or for, vice versa, just because the distance was so long. And so she, honestly, I don't know how she did it. I don't think I could do it, right? She suffered a tremendous amount, and she just would always put her kids first. And I think she just sacrificed her entire life to make sure that we were all raised properly. Now, we were definitely poor. We lived on food stamps and all that stuff. Free lunches. I never had to pay for a lunch all throughout my education years. But she was always there. It was a big thing that we said in our last podcast, just being there. So my mom was always there. Didn't matter what time of day, if I was coming home from kindergarten or if I was coming home from college, my mom was always there cooking. She was in her element in the kitchen, making the best refried beans, the best quesadillas, and it was always like that, And she always just had a smile on her face and just a great energy, And that energy is something that's contagious, And it's something that you're just born with. And I attribute it to the way she was raised, by her father, my grandfather, and then and she would tell me it was just full of love, right? And she missed her mom because her biological mom passed, right? But her stepmom, which I knew as grandma, loved her just as much, We always look at our parents like from what we know, but they had a whole life before us, And so my mom had me, for example, at 40, and so, but she was a teenager and she was in her 20s, and so after my dad passed, she started telling me about her boyfriend, this one boyfriend that she had, and boy, she would just talk about him all the time, and I was like, and out of respect for my dad, she never talked about him while he was alive, But now that he had passed, I think she had the opportunity to just start telling me about him. And she would tell me about how much he loved her, and he was an engineer and all this stuff, So and I had the opportunity to see my mom in her final years, and it was those kinds of stories that she would tell me about that it just made, staying in El Paso just worth it, No regrets about ever moving away from El Paso, chasing whatever kind of dreams, but to be here, have my own family, and then see my parents, and then see my mom kind of at the end of her life be able to just, you talk about being at peace. She was tremendously at peace, right? After all the crap that she went through, kind of like what you're saying about your mom, she, or your grandma, I think when you go through all that hell and then you get a little bit of just tranquility, then you really appreciate that tranquility. So it just exudes out of her, And so anybody that knew her would tell you the same thing. She was just so pleasant and just always just nice. But it's that energy, because it's like at Shawshank Redemption, when you crawl through a mile of crap, and once you get out the other side of it, it's just glorious, And so I look at that a lot because you can't teach people to be happy. You can't teach people to be at peace. My mom found out through her faith and just through life examples, and also I think she grounded it to the way she was raised, those initial years of her life. So she did die very, very peaceful, and she died in her home, which I think is super romantic.
Yeah, today's age is different, right? That's not that common. So your mom's from a different generation. So when my grandmother, so your parents did not divorce.
No,
they stayed married despite challenges, and
they probably had 1 or 2 good years in there.
40, and
50 years.
How long were they married?
Like 50 years.
Right. There's a lot of sacrifice there.
Tremendous.
And so growing up, for example, I did not know that my grandparents, my mom's parents, were divorced. I just knew they didn't live together. And I come to find out, I don't know, maybe I was a preteen or teenager that they were divorced, and I had no idea why.
Right.
No one talked about the family violence, that, the kind of stuff that the police come over for.
Yeah.
And not just break it up, but arrest people.
Wow.
Right? No one talked about that. My mom never, in fact, I asked her once about it, and she's like, why do you want to talk about that? That's in the past. She didn't want to talk about it.
Sounds like she compartmentalized that,
Yeah, she put it somewhere in a box and put that box on the top shelf, right? But I got these stories from one of my uncles, and they started coming out, and I realized, while my grandma felt compelled to divorce my grandfather, she waited until all the kids graduated from high school and were out. And that was, she's like, that's it. I've done my job, raised my kids.
Right.
But also for her, this piece came from church, right? She would also read the Bible. She learned how to play piano at an older age, wound up playing piano for the church choir, sang in the church choir, and similar, right? My grandma was very positive, loving, caring. But I think it was church and her faith in God that gave her the strength to do what she felt she needed to do for her safety, right? And for her children's safety, even though they were, technically adults by that time.
That's a different motive, if you're
if you're not safe,
safe
physically not
period.
safe, right? So you talked about your mom's faith. Was there anything particular that kept her there?
So you mentioned something right now that kind of triggered me to remember when I turned 18, right, and finished high school. She went to stay with my sister in Dallas and stayed there for like 6 months, 9 months, and didn't really tell me why. Although I knew she was not happy at home, right? And I think that was like the fork in the road for her. I was the last one to finish school. If she was going to leave my dad, that was going to be the perfect window to do it in. And she told me that she would pray a lot and she would just ask God for guidance. And so she said that one particular morning she opened up her Bible, and as she put her finger on the first sentence to read, it said something like, You know, your role as a woman is to stay with your man and to stay with them to, like, you know, sustain the household or whatever it was. Bottom line, it was not to leave. And she took that wholeheartedly. And she said that at that moment, she decided that she was just going to stick it out. Mm-hmm. And she did, you know. My dad, I think he lucked out, you know. She stuck by him.
Totally.
Oh, my gosh. And we all did, because it's too easy, right, to just get up and leave. But I think my mom, you know, like that faith and the direction that she knew she wanted, when my dad was passing, she never left his side, which that's, like, I don't know how she did that, right? I think she compartmentalized all those 50 years of, like, negativity and then just looked at, like, all the good things that he had done, built a house, provided her everything, you know. And despite all the heartache and all the pain that they had gone through, she wanted my dad to die in his house that they both built. And that came true.
Yeah, another sort of prediction that came true, right?
Yep. And which is a beautiful thing, because if she would have left, then that moment, you know, of them dying in the house that they both made over 40, 50 years, then that would have happened in an apartment or somebody else's room or something like that, you know. So very romantic, you know. You come to try to live the American dream. You build a house, you have all these kids, all these grandkids, and now you die in the same house that you built, which I think that's a great end to their story.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You know, those stories are less and less.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of sacrifice.
Huge.
And although, you know, it takes two to tango and it goes both ways, you know, in those times and those relationships, knowing how our fathers and grandfathers were,
yep.
I don't think it was 50-50.
No way.
There was a lot more sacrifice by the woman.
Absolutely.
You know, from what I can tell. Now, in today's day and age, you know, times have changed because both parents are working, both parents, you know, try to have shared responsibilities, although, you know, women have that second shift, as they call it, right? They work all day like we do. They come home, and it's natural, I think, for the kids, because this is what we've seen growing up. Is like, hey, Mom, what's for dinner?
Sure.
Right? Hey, Mom, when are we going to do X? Or, you know, who's going to take me to soccer practice, right? And not to say that we as dads, particularly you and I, have not pulled our fair share of weight, but, you know, I think we'd both agree that the moms carry a lot of weight.
Right.
And today's, and the past, and also today's homes. And
well, it's kind of like I look at them as like the anchor, you know, to keep everybody, when the boat's rocking, you know, they're the anchor.
And fair or not, right? Fair or not, they are the anchor.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Although us men really need to step up there.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, knowing a lot about our history, and as people get to know us, I think that we've done our fair share.
Sure.
But it's not easy work.
No.
On both sides. So my mom, you know, because my parents did divorce, probably around 1980.
Okay.
Which is, you know, we're starting to head into tough times in the Texas economy because the oil is about to drop. And, you know, she had two boys at the house. My dad worked. He was a mailman. But, you know, now you got split households, you know. So you got split income, split households, split costs, that sort of thing. And my dad paid the child support. But, you know, he kind of did so begrudgingly.
Yeah.
Because I was there and I would see it, right, how he would act about it.
Right.
Which is unfortunate. But not to say he didn't take care of us or love us. He showed us in other ways. But my mom, you know, she just had to work. You know, she always, you know, she worked full time. Mostly for, at that time, HLMP, Houston Lighting and Power, which was the electric company.
Okay.
But as time went on, you know, she worked part-time waitressing at different restaurants, you know, and we just got used to our mom, you know, mom being busy.
Yeah.
You know, not that she wouldn't be home, but we got used to, you know, we were latchkey kids. We would go to school, come home, let ourselves in. She'd call us from work, make sure we're home okay. And then she'd be like, make sure you vacuum before I get home.
Right.
Right.
Throwing a little chore in there.
Yeah, always. Yeah. Vacuum. Make sure you vacuum. There better not be any dirty dishes. that sort of thing, right?
Sure.
So we got used to helping out, cleaning up. Eventually, not that it's a big deal, but, at a young age, probably about 11 or 12, I started washing my own clothes because not that she was too busy, but she just wasn't good at it, right?
Okay.
I don't know why. My mom, to this day, we tell her not to touch a bottle of Clorox. Don't touch it. Don't touch the Clorox. Don't even look at it. Because
ruin your favorite shirt.
Every shower curtains would come out, with the mancha, right? Like, how do we get this white? Oh, my mom, she washing the shower curtains, and she loves Clorox to kill whatever.
Right.
But I can guarantee you, I'm going to come out with white stains on my shirts and pants, and I was really particular, very OCD, and my clothes had to be pressed a certain way. I would iron my own clothes, and then I go, Mom, I'll wash my clothes, right? Don't touch them. I'll wash them. One less thing for her.
Right.
Learn to wash my own clothes, iron my own clothes, that sort of thing. But she was always busy working, whether it was during the day, several nights during the week, waitressing. And then, when her and my father met in junior college, him coming back from Vietnam, but soon after they had me. So that changed her plans, right? So she never finished. I don't even think she completed that much. But at some point, when my brother and I was probably in middle school by this time, maybe fifth grade, somewhere around there, and he would have been, in the middle of elementary. She started going back to community college, taking a class here or there. No clear pathway to a degree plan, but just taking a class here and there.
Right.
She did that for years. And then eventually she had enough credits where, and it was HCC, Houston Community College. She would drag us along like she would to the track. And these were night classes, usually at a local high school. And my brother and I would just kind of run around the halls. Back in the day when, you didn't have to supervise your kids all the time everywhere. Yeah. And, did that for years. And then probably by the time I was in college, she transferred to a full-time program with the bachelor's program, a weekend college. And so she graduated with her bachelor's degree the same year my brother graduated with his bachelor's degree.
Nice.
Took her probably 20 years to complete a 4-year degree, right?
Hey, but she got it, right?
But that is my mom in a nutshell.
Right.
She's the tortoise. She does not mind being the tortoise.
Right.
She's run ahead. You run ahead of me. And you're going to run ahead, but you're going to get tired at some point and slow down or stop. And then you look behind you, like,
and she's there.
Here she comes at that same pace, but she just keeps going,
Yeah.
keeps going. And she accomplishes these goals that way. And so my mom, my dad was the one who would give advice, tell me, don't do this, don't do that. Love storytelling. That's his side of the family. My mom's family they're not big storytellers.
Right.
Yet there's a ton of stories there.
Okay.
But they just didn't like digging them up. So my mom didn't really tell me a lot of stories. I'd have to really get it out of her, and it had to be more of a positive experience.
Right.
But when she did say something, like she wanted to give advice, I listened, right? Because it wasn't often. And in these few times, there were these nuggets, right? These gems.
Sure.
And so, after college, I just got a job. I didn't have a plan. Although I'm a professor now, I've been a professor for 20 years, I have a master's and a PhD.
Right.
None of that was part of a plan, right? Went to college, got a degree, had a few things that I was looking into that I thought that would be cool, become an attorney or try to become an officer in the Air Force,
Right.
Did testing, and none of them panned out. So I got a job at an insurance company. A buddy of mine said, "Hey, they're hiring," and I said, "Well, I got to do something. I got to work.
Right.
I got student loans on the horizon," and I did that for a few years. It wasn't necessarily me, but I made friends. I learned a lot, right? And any job, you're going to learn something.
Sure.
Then I transferred industries, changed industries, went to the energy industry, which is huge in Houston. Houston's the energy capital of the world, amongst other things that it's known for. And I actually got the job at the same company my mom worked for.
Oh, wow.
It was called NORAM, which became part of Reliant. And Reliant Energy, that's where the Texans play. So they were Enron's biggest competitor. So it's a big company working downtown Houston on a skyscraper. I thought, okay, well, this is good. I'm gonna make money, right? I'm in the energy industry, and here I am. I get this job. I took a pay cut, thinking I'm gonna offset it with commissions and sales. We had to make 100 calls a day.
Jeez.
I had a little bitty cubicle. This is late 90s, long time ago.
Yeah.
The internet was just kind of getting going.
Right.
And we didn't have internet at home. No one had internet at home. If you did, it was dial-up, and it was
Right.
super slow. And I was like, what is this? Well, we had the internet, and it was decently, fast.
Right.
And I was there making my 100 phone calls a day. I take a little break here and there, and I thought, this can't be my life.
Sure.
This is, I can't make 100 phone calls a day for the rest of, I can't even finish this year, I don't think.
Right.
And so I'm trying to make a list of, what do I like to do? Right? And I'm thinking, well, it's like a Brady Bunch episode, right? I like to study and learn languages. I like to read. I love to travel.
Yeah.
I think I'm good at teaching people things. And I thought, well, maybe I can teach Spanish out of high school. I go, no, I can't work with kids,
Yeah.
teenagers. I don't have the patience for that. So I started Googling master's programs in Spanish. And then I thought, well, maybe I can become a professor. Right. I don't know what that entails, but maybe I could, go to the higher level. My mom worked in the same building, so I called her extension. And I said, hey, Mom, I'm thinking maybe I can become a professor, a Spanish professor. I could teach Spanish. And she goes, well, that sounds like a good idea, mijo. So I'm on the phone with her looking at the internet, and I said, well, there's a master's program in Houston. There's two, University of Houston and Rice University. That's 2 years. Then maybe 4 years. Looks like 4 years for a PhD. I can go somewhere else, get out of Houston. Been in Houston my whole life. Doing the math, I go, well, that's 6 years. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'll be 33 by the time I'm done.
Right.
And I said, never mind, Mom. That's a stupid idea. Thinking
Right.
that's so far away, 32, 33.
Right.
Without even blinking an eye or pause, she goes, mijo, you can be 32 with it or 32 without it.
There you go.
And I thought, yeah, she's right. I do plan to make that age. So I applied and got in, did all of it, right? It took me actually 1 year longer than what I had estimated. But yeah, she was absolutely right. I mean, it was just a simple piece of advice. And that's the way my mom is. She doesn't complicate things. She doesn't try to philosophize, on these grand scales. She just breaks it down to you and not telling you, but showing you. I'm going to work my butt off.
Right.
Those people are going to pass me up, but I'm going to catch up.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And just watch me.
Yeah.
Right?
Look at her now.
Right? And so my dad was always testing me, trying to push me. My mom just showed me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of power in that.
Oh, yeah. There's, there's walk the walk and there's, talk the talk or walk the walk. And she was doing walking the walking, right? She was showing you.
She walked the walk, slowly jogged the jog.
Hey.
But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of mom she is. I'm still blessed to have her in my life. But yeah, she just keeps going.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so she got that probably from her mom, and then she's passing it on to you. I mean, this is what we do, I mean, you have to take her example, and then now you're a professor, and you're, blessing the minds of all these young kids.
Yeah, and you pass these lessons on.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of things that we teach, whether it's writing, critical thinking, but sometimes, you just want to show and share grit.
Yeah.
A lot of my students come with grit anyway, but you just kind of lean into the grit part because there's always going to be someone smarter than you, someone better looking, someone who, like my mom, just runs faster than you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're going to finish the race.
Right.
You mentioned your mom and the Bible, and there's a quote in there, the race does not always go to the swiftest.
Right.
And so when things don't go my way and I think, well, I deserve that or I'm better than that, well, the race doesn't always go to the swiftest.
Sure.
So
let me ask you, about your parents. Obviously you said that they did separate, but you come from them, right? So what kind of a relationship you as a son looking at them, do you take your mom's grit and your dad's lessons, or how would you like characterize them simply?
Yeah, I mean, my mom definitely grit, and my dad, both of them a number of things, but I think service.
Okay.
Although mom, she believes in that too, but my dad, although he was a talker,
Yeah.
he also was heavily involved in LULAC.
Okay.
And from a young age, my brother and I would be at all these events with him.
Yeah.
So we went to the cantinas, and they're, he's having a good time. But we also went to these scholarship fundraisers, and he consistently took us to mass on Sundays. Well, mom didn't, she didn't really, a little bit took us to church, but that wasn't her thing as much. Whereas my dad, we always went. And so my dad was into service and he was into relationships.
Okay.
He'd always say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Right? So I was getting this great messaging from both on different levels.
Right.
And they both helped build me up. I think it's easy to look at the external, right? You hear your dad and you look up to him and and you see those things. But my dad didn't, he didn't go back to school. I mean, he finished his study to become a mailman,
Right.
but he didn't go back to school. He didn't achieve. He said, "Oh, maybe I should go back and get my bachelor's," but he never did. Right? He never even took a class.
Right.
Whereas my mom, she would set a goal, and she just start.
Yeah.
And I there's a lot of power in that, because sometimes the hardest thing to do something, and we talk about this in class, is just starting.
Yeah.
Because you got a paper due and it's due on Monday. Oh my gosh, how do I get started?
Right.
Well, you open up your laptop and you just start typing.
Step one. Right?
Yeah, just get the words out, and then you'll tighten it up later. And so, yeah, I mean, just doing it. I think that's, people overanalyze it and try to get everything perfect, the situation perfect. I want to jog. Well, I got to go buy the right shoes, and I got to find where I'm going to jog and learn how to stretch just right and get, no, you just put on what you got and you get out to the track.
Just start.
Yeah.
You just start. Yeah. I think you're, you're very blessed to have those two positive influences, also different styles, different, completely different people. Right. But you have that both positive influence from both parents, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your dad was trying to balance out his life, and your mom as well. But you still ended up getting all the positives, which is freaking awesome, right? Now you're a good, productive person, and hopefully your kids are going to be productive and carry on good things.
Well, we try to pass it on. I mean, you and I have talked about generational wealth, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a future episode. But here's something. I don't know if anybody's coined this. I'm sure it exists. But how about generational health?
Oh, gosh.
Not generational wealth.
Never heard of it.
Well, here we go.
Yeah.
Right? Generational health. Because, both my parents came from dysfunctional households.
Sure.
And that's the baseline, dysfunctional. Sometimes the norms were violent, right?
Yeah.
They did not bring that into raising me,
Good on them.
right? They could have. This is what we saw,
Yeah.
so this is what we're going to do. And I think that's what a lot of parenting is like. Well, no one taught me how to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't see it modeled. So we're just going to redo what I saw.
Right.
Well, that's not a great way to parent.
No.
Because our kids deserve better.
And that's where you get into these vicious cycles where, you just never break out of whatever kind of dysfunctionality it is.
Right.
At some point you got to just, we all can think for ourselves and we can all make decisions based on what we see. Of course, they're going to influence us, and hopefully, we take the positive, or we take the bad and intentionally know the bad and intentionally know that we're not going to do that,
So in the last episode, you talked about your dad was an alcoholic. And right now, another future episode plug,
Sure.
Eduardo and I are going through a 40-day fast from alcohol.
Yeah. How many
So
days are
clearly
we
we're not alcoholics, because 40 days would be pretty impossible for alcoholics.
Right.
We're social drinkers.
Yeah.
Do you think it was your mom who influenced you in some way not to take that path your dad was on?
That's a good question. No, I don't think it was my mom. I think it was my dad. So I was lucky enough to see how terrible it was, and I was on the receiving end of the emotional part of it, and I knew I didn't want my kids to feel that. And so it's a good question, because you would think like, oh, I'm just going to pick a side, right? I'm going to side with the good because my mom wasn't drinking.
Did she ever drink?
Yeah, she like in my lifetime, like maybe once or twice, but for her to drink anything was not the norm at all. So I took the influence that my dad had on me from the drinking, and I just made a decision from that to not be an alcoholic, And maybe it's genetic, because, man, when we start... So, all right, going back to the 40-day, dry spell that we're under right now of no drinking.
And how far in
I don't even know.
Maybe 15 days, 20 days, somewhere in there?
I was thinking around 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, 2 weeks, yeah.
So, first of all, I don't drink a lot, right? But I would do some good binge drinking, like on a Saturday or whatever.
Right.
And I've been on a health journey since the beginning of the year, and so I was limiting my alcohol already. So it wasn't like I was drinking a beer a day, or it was like 2 times at the most in a week.
And it's because we're going out.
And we're going out
Right.
out dancing, and we're doing social drinking, right?
Right.
When my kids were little, I would drink a beer almost every day, at least a beer, or just to chill, and I just eliminated all of that stuff. And so then I would just go do a little bit of binge drinking on the weekends, and it would just take a lot out of me. And so when we decided not to drink, man, it was psychologically, I was having a hard time with it, because I was like looking forward to that, little bit of binge drinking on that Saturday, and knowing that it wasn't going to be there kind of pissed me off, right? It was just like, damn, I don't really like this. Now we're 2 weeks in, and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling a little bit more productive, and I feel okay. I haven't lost any weight, I don't think. I've probably gained a little bit, but I feel okay. And what really sticks with me is my recovery time from a night of drinking, and I'm talking about 5-6 beers or drinks.
Or ranch waters.
Oh my gosh.
Favorite,
yeah, those are terrible. But I would
Terribly good.
I would be hungover for like 2 days. My body's dehydrated. I can't go work out, and it would just take me like 2-3 days to get over that. And now that I don't have that, I feel like more energized, and I could think a little clearer in the mornings and stuff. So we'll see how I am at day 40. But right now I'm feeling pretty good. The first week or so was kind of annoying, because I was really looking forward to my drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I hear you.
How about you? How are you feeling from all this?
No, I feel fine. I'm not a big drinker, also social, maybe technically binge,
Yeah.
If we're going to go out. From the returning home perspective,
Yeah.
That's a much better thing. Not that I would drive home under the influence, but I'm just maybe tired, but I'm not, I'm certainly not under any influence.
Yeah.
Right. No, I feel fine. I think it's going well. But, one of the interesting things about drinking, for some reason, I don't really drink in front of my mom.
Okay.
Like, I never grew up drinking around her.
Yeah.
Or my grandma. One time, I think, because my uncle offered me a beer, and my mom kind of like looked at me like, hey, grandma's here, and,
Right.
and I was
Just out of
always,
respect.
I was always a good boy. So I didn't really grow up drinking in front of them. And so thinking about that in our 40-day fast, and knowing your dad's history, did you drink in front of your mom, and how did she look at that?
So let's just dive right into the alcoholism, right? So my dad was a full-fledged alcoholic, right? Went to the AA programs, went to rehab for like 30 days, and then would continue going to AA meetings for years. And so then when I was drinking age, I would tell him, like, hey, Dad, are you cool with me drinking, And he looked at me and he goes, yes, you have to drink, right? Like,
You have to.
yeah, like you have. He goes, it makes me happy to know that you're enjoying a drink.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so he was full on, like,
Supportive.
like, yes, do it.
I got your back.
Yeah, yeah,
Here.
and that's how they were, right? My dad was just like, yeah, like, absolutely, go and drink. Right?
Yeah.
And then my mom, I would drink in front of her. I would never get like sloppy drunk or anything like
Right.
that, but I would drink. In fact, one time, my sister asked her, "Hey, does Eddie drink?" And she goes, "No, I don't think he drinks." Right? And this was like after college, and I was like, "Man, I drank a lot during college," you know. But I guess in her mind, you know, I was some sort of
Not
saint.
compared to Dad.
No. But we all drank. You know, all my siblings, we all drink. One of my brothers doesn't drink anymore. He stopped drinking like 20-something years ago. But we would all, I think we all in our, you know, my siblings, we would all drink. And so right now I feel like, I asked my kids, like, do you remember me drinking a lot? And they're like, no. And I was like, good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you because, well, clearly your kids have seen you have a drink.
Oh, yeah.
Have they ever seen you drunk, do you think?
One time. So I don't think my daughter has. You know, she's 13. My son has when I turned 50.
It's a great age to celebrate.
It was a big. It was
a
happy
milestone.
to be alive, right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
he was with me and some close friends of mine, and so he still talks about it because that same night we went to this little bar, like a neighborhood bar, and I had just repainted my little sports car, and when we walked out of the bar, somebody had crashed into the front of it and broken the front headlights and dented the front hood and just took off, right? And I was so drunk, I was really like, well, at least we weren't in the car, right? And I was just like happy to be alive. I'm like, well, oh well, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're not in jail. And so my
Life
son's
is
like,
good.
he's like, you were just so chill about it. I'm like, well, son, what do you want me to do, right? Get mad at you, get mad at somebody else, like they're gone, right? And nothing's going to change it. And I was like, let's go home.
You certainly weren't a mean drunk.
I was happy. I'm a happy drunk.
Yeah, and I was curious because I don't think my daughters have ever seen me drunk.
Okay.
Although they claim to have seen me, quote unquote, drunk once.
Yeah.
I wasn't drunk. You know, we went
To them they were.
Yeah, well, because they never seen me drink that much,
yeah.
right?
Which is a good thing.
Right, and so we were at an Astros game.
Yeah.
It's fun, you know, with family. It's baseball. It's slow moving. You know, you can get up and get food and drinks and not miss much.
Right.
And there's a Mexican restaurant in the stadium called El Tiempo, which is the grandsons of Ninfa, who was a famous restaurateur in Houston. Anyway, I don't know what they put in those margaritas, but if you're going to pay $20-something for a margarita, it better be good,
Yeah.
tasty, and big,
Right.
and have a decent amount of alcohol.
Probably not the best tequila, but sure.
But and it may not be tequila.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, one will put you on your butt, right?
Right.
And so I had one, maybe two or 1.5, I don't know. And they claimed that I just felt good. I was home, you know, amongst people that I just typically get along with, you know, people from the Gulf Coast and watching Astros baseball. We're winning amongst family, you know, and they just saw me like you turn 50. They just saw me happy.
Right.
But, you know.
That's the closest reference that they have for you getting
Yeah, I
drunk.
wasn't falling over or slurring or,
Right.
you know, doing anything ridiculous, I don't think. But, you know, it's interesting how we both saw our dads on more than one occasion drink way too much.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, just like whether it's our health or wealth, not that we're wealthy, but just the way we look at money and the way we try to raise our kids, and also drinking. It's changed and from our parents' generation to our kids' generation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a number of things there that have changed, and yet, you know, the way we raised our kids, the way we love them, the way we try to teach them, clearly our parents have also had an influence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, so, you know, you're talking about drinking and stuff, and then, you know, bringing it back to the moms. My mom was my dad's ride or die for sure. And almost literally, you know, like back in the day, my dad was definitely under the influence coming back from Juarez, from some quinceañera. and how we would make it home. My mom never drove, She never drove, but she was always by his side, and I would always question, like, how does this happen, right? Like, how do you just sit next to somebody and let them drive you home? And this was like in the 70s. Let them drive you home. They're drunk, but my mom was still guiding him, telling him where to turn, because my dad was so drunk, right? This is nothing, not proud of this and not condoning this, but this is just what the reality was. Right? My mom was telling him to stop, telling him to turn left, making sure that we got home. Again, she was completely sober and my dad was completely drunk, coming from Juarez, because that's where he would go spend a lot of time. And it was a crazy time, but literally the ride or die, right? And my mom never, ever left my dad's side. No matter what my dad did or no matter what terrible things he might have done in his life, she was there by his side for his last breath, right? And so something super, super beautiful about that. I don't know. A lot of people don't have that in them, but that's what it is.
There's something to that ride or die. My mom did not have that for my dad.
Yeah.
But in her defense, my dad did not make it easy for her.
Yeah.
In other ways, right? But I mentioned how my mom grew up. I'm sure there was love. I don't want to discount the love.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was love in the house, and there was a lot of positive memories. But there's also a lot of, like I mentioned, violence, physical violence, verbal abuse by my grandfather. And so there were times I think several of her siblings were resentful of my grandfather. Didn't show him a lot of love, and I didn't understand it growing up. I just thought, well, he's grumpy and hard to be around, and that's just the way it is. And despite all the negative things my mom saw, and despite how much she loved her mom, like my mom and her mom were very close. My mom's the one that took good care of her, and in the end, throughout her whole life. Despite all that, my mom was the one that also cared for my grandfather.
Yeah.
The other ones, some may have had a relationship, others really didn't. But my grandfather, because my grandparents were divorced, I didn't understand it. It was just a matter of fact that my grandfather would travel back and forth between Mexico. He already had his benefits and was retired and, also some disability. And he would go live in Mexico like a king for months at a time, where he was from. And then he would come back home and stay with us, me and my mom and my brother. And he would share a bedroom with me and my brother. We just had a 2-bedroom house. I don't know how we had 3 beds in there. It was probably bunk beds and another bed. But my grandpa was also a smoker. So because he walked with a cane and then later a walker, there was no getting up in the middle of the night to use a restroom. That was another issue.
Yeah.
But I would see this orange glow in the middle of the night.
Right.
And that was him smoking, right? And we're all taking in secondhand smoke. And that was, my mom bought this little bitty thing that air purifier, but it was the size of a telephone. So I doubt it did much.
Right.
But that's how, that was my norm. And she always took him in. There were no questions asked, stay with the boys. And so my mom was always there for him as well, right? That sort of, like you mentioned with your mom and her husband, my mom was like that with her dad.
Right.
And so that went on since I was a kid all the way through college. And so when I was in college, we didn't have much money. I don't know how we even afforded that. And, really it was mostly on me, part-time jobs and grants and student loans, which I paid off in full. It took me years, but I paid them off. But it was my sophomore year in college. It was spring, and it was exam week. So I remember those details. And I just, it was a finals exam, but I just went to a party, came back for something in my room. And these were landlines, and the phone rang, probably like 1 a.m. or something, and I answered. It was my mom. And she said, "Your grandpa just passed away."
Yeah.
And I knew he was in Mexico. He was in Mexico. And so, I was sad. But she had told me later, and this is a story that my brother also confirmed. They both heard it.
Yeah.
So my grandpa walked with a cane and then a walker. So later in life, they had the walker, and you could hear him coming down the hallway or coming in the kitchen or wherever, making his grunts, and also the walker, step by step.
Right.
So she said the night before she got that call that he had passed away, she was in her bedroom. My brother was in, our room, but I was away from college. And they were in bed, their own beds in separate bedrooms, and they both heard his walker coming down the hallway. Oh. And my mom said she heard him, and he started to whisper, Yolanda.
Oh, gosh.
Yolanda.
Yeah.
And she was scared.
Sure.
She got under the covers. She didn't want to look. Well, the next morning she got the call that he had passed away.
He was looking for her.
Yeah. And so we didn't have any money, and they scraped together something, and, they went to Orizaba, Veracruz, where he was at, and there was always someone with the body until she was able to arrive, and had him buried. A cousin of my mom, she paid for the bus ticket from her and my brother back, because they didn't have any money. And a few years later, I returned with my mom to that cemetery because there was no plot to speak of. It was just, was a plot, but there was no headstone. And she had promised to come back and pay for a headstone. In Mexico, you can do these things piece at a time, and that's what we did, right?
Yeah.
But she had told me that story, and I always remembered that, whether you believe in spirits or not, it's not really a thing I'm into, but, there's something there about the people that we love. Like your mom, you mentioned her heart would have remained in Mexico. Well, the same thing with my grandpa. He always knew he would go back to Mexico. He always knew that was his home.
Yeah.
But his family was in the U.S.
Right.
Right. And so, there's just a lot of similarities there with our families, and also culturally speaking, but also Mexico or U.S. and mom and dad.
Right.
Maybe the U.S. is like dad. It kind of sets the rules,
sure,
tells us what to do, how to do it. But there's something about your mom.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't quite set the rules. She doesn't always tell you what to do, but your heart belongs with her.
Yeah.
And
that's really great.
Yeah. You just always love your mom.
Oh, yeah. No matter what, right?
No matter what.
So we're both blessed to have, parents we knew, right? And so my mom was always just so selfless. And one of the things that she made my dad do was she told him, hey, listen, one day me and you are not going to be here, and I don't want to put the burden on the kids to bury us. So she made him go out and find a plot for their final resting place. And it's so funny because while she was looking for a place, she went to some funeral home, and they would take them to see different plots. And so one of the plots was across the street on Alameda from Chico's Tacos, right? And if you're from El Paso, Chico's Tacos on Alameda, it's kind of a noisy street, kind of busy near a hospital and stuff like that.
Is it 24/7?
Not anymore. Or no, it's not. They close at 11 now.
Okay.
But anyways, my dad was like, well, this one will work, right? My dad just didn't care, right? And my mom's like, no, we're not going to lay here for eternity, with Chico's Tacos, right? The traffic going by all the time.
I don't want to smell tacos all the time.
It's so funny, right? And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, Mom. And so they finally found the plot where they're at now, which is on the east, the very far east side of El Paso. And when they got it, there was nothing out there, right? It's really beautiful now. But my mom was just always thinking of others, right? That's just what she did. So the kitchen's the heart of the home. That's where my mom always was, right? And so that's where, she was always in her little bathrobe and always just making the frijoles and the rice and whatever else. So when they're finally not there, that's when you really, really, truly miss them.
And then you bought the house next door.
Which is weird. I ain't gonna lie.
It's like you wanted to be close to them.
Well, it was ideal because they were so proud too. When I bought the house right next to them, My dad wasn't alive when I bought it, but my mom was. And oh my gosh, my mom was so proud that I bought that house, right? Because it was always a great house. And we grew up building a house, only wishing we could have a house like that, you know. And now there I am owning it, which I was very happy that my mom was able to see that, and she saw some of the renovations I did. But the bigger part was the being there. You know, my mom was always there for us. She was always in the kitchen. She was the heart of our family. She was the heart of that house. And when that first moment, when you walk back in that kitchen, and knowing she's not going to be there, it just, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
You can do it,
I
dude.
just keep on choking up.
I know.
All right. So, but that's what it is, right? It's the house, it's the home, it's the kitchen. My mom was the heart. The kitchen was the heart of that house. And the first time that I walked into that house alone, without her or my dad alive, was just maybe not pivotal, but it was a memorable day knowing that they're not around.
So, to all our listeners, once again, thanks for tuning in to TBT Bro Talk. And hey, vatos, remember, pónganse trucha.